So welcome everyone to the latest in the series of the Development and Support webinars, delivered by the NIHR Academy. My name is Martine Scannell and I work in the NIHR Academy as a Development and Support Manager. This webinar, Optimising Development, is delivered in collaboration between the NIHR Academy and Oak Ridge, one of our Leadership Development Programme partners. This webinar will be facilitated by Mark Blanchard and Joe Clare, both senior consultants at Oak Ridge who have extensive experience in behavioural and cultural change and are passionate about helping people and teams to achieve their full potential. So Joe, I'm now going to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Martine. Thank you for that warm welcome. And again, a warm welcome to everybody today. Mark and I are delighted to be here for today's session. Just a few kind of ways of working on our session. As Martine's alluded to already, we'd love to hear from you. So please do share any thoughts, ideas, questions with us, and you can use the chat box for your thoughts and ideas, and there is a Q&A section for any specific questions. So please do use those. We'll be using also a couple of polls, so we'd love you to take part. If you do have any technical issues, perhaps report those via chat. We'll try and help. And recognising it might be handy just to have some paper and a pen or a notes page open to capture any insights or actions that you might take from today's session. So our focus for today is optimising development. So recognising the importance of optimising development, thinking about the fact that we are all incredibly busy people with incredibly busy lives. So if we want to take time out for our own development, which is clearly very important, it's scarce time. We need to get as much value from it as possible. We want to help you think about how using a strengths-based approach can help. And we can share some of our thoughts and ideas around focusing on development of strengths rather than development areas, which may be a slightly different way of thinking about development. And we're going to share some tools and techniques to help you build your development pathway, to reflect where you are now, identify where you'd like to be, and how you might get there. And we recognise that many of you will be Academy members, and as health and social care researchers, you'll have a clinical specialism and therefore formal CPD, continuing professional development requirements to fulfil. So we just wanted to stress that this session today isn't necessarily focusing on that. It's going to be much more around your own personal development as a leader, as a contributor, thinking about competencies and behaviours and how you work successfully more generally. And so we recognise there may be some balancing of that with your CPD requirements too. So even more reason to ensure a valuable investment of time in development. And why is this so important? We looked at some research that was conducted by the Wellcome Institute. It was published in January 2020. And they were looking at the culture of research and how researchers felt about the culture they worked in. And when we looked at the results around development, whilst obviously 95% of respondents saw that creating development and career opportunities were important, you would hopefully expect that was a high number. Only 50% of the participants saw this happening at a team level and 44% at an organisational level. And so creating development and career opportunities for ourselves and our teams is really critical for growth, innovation and delivering great outcomes. So paying attention at that organisational and team level is clearly really important to building this culture of development focus. And creating the kind of culture where a colleague can take ownership of their own development, identifying their own opportunities and support that's required as a result of that development can be really helpful for both creating the focus, but also engagement and ownership of the development. If we've considered our own development, identified what's important to us, we're much more likely to actually complete the development activity and ensure it has an impact for us. And so the critical aspect for those of us that are leaders is how do we facilitate and support that development in busy time? And how do we create that that engagement and making sure it's meaningful and relevant for the individual. So the tools that we introduced today, whilst we'll be sharing them for you to be thinking about, you can also think about how you use them to support your team members too. So let's open up our first poll, and it'd be great to hear from you. Mark, would you like to introduce the poll today?
Sure will, thanks Jo. So poll number 1 is, how motivated do you feel to take control of your own development? So everyone should see the poll there. So we've got very much, somewhat, not really, or not at all. Okay, the results coming in. What we got? About 75%. Don't be shy.
Right.
So how motivated do you feel? 83%. Just a few more. Okay, close in 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's close the poll there. Share the results. All right. So what we've got is 38% very much, 56% be the leading one, somewhat, 6% not really, and nobody has said none at all. So the one there is like somewhat motivated, Jo.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we'd hope to see a higher percentage, of course, because you've actually volunteered to attend this webinar, so we're expecting that. It's good to see that nobody has not at all in that result, isn't it? But I guess just thinking about that, Mark, you know, reflecting on your own career in global pharmaceuticals, you know, when you were kind of busy and focused, what kind of stopped you from taking ownership of your own development and investing in time in it? Can you reflect back?
If I can remember that far back, I think you tend to get too busy in the day job and not really finding the time to take a step back and think about your own development. So really, I relied on having a good line manager who was actually spotting things for me to help my development. So it's kind of, I kind of semi-transferred the responsibility a little bit to other people to kind of look out for me while I just focused on doing what I was paid to do.
And I guess the more powerful aspect of taking some time out for yourself, it might have been really much more targeted to what you were really interested in. And of course, having a good relationship with your line manager to support that. It'd be great to hear from you, you know, in terms of those of you perhaps that have, you know, marked a result of somewhat or not really, you know, what might be stopping you? What is it that you're feeling is stopping you taking control of your own development? And maybe pop those in the chat and we'll revisit that in a short minute. In terms of some of the challenges, sometimes we're not always sure where to start. You know, to some extent, some roles have got very clear career pathways, some roles haven't. And I guess we've got a wide variety of roles on the session today. But for those of you perhaps that are in a research role, one of the tools that we've looked at as part of our work that we've done with the NHR is the VTI Research and Development Framework, which I think is a really good comprehensive framework that describes knowledge, behaviour and attributes of successful researchers. And so it can help you provide a benchmark of what good looks like. It can help you look at where your strengths are, where your gaps in development are against the descriptions. And so therefore you can prioritise your development needs, but also then monitor development progress, because you'll see, if you do have a look at the document, you'll see there's kind of stages in career that you can use to help monitor your development through your career. And we've got some links at the end of the pack with the link to this particular document, so please do you know, register for a copy of the slides and we can get that to you, so you'll be able to have a look at that if you haven't come across it before. So Mark, just anything coming in the chat in terms of our initial question around what's stopping people? Has anything come through?
Nothing through yet. It's early days though, so yeah, if you've got any comments, please put them in there and we can kind of cover those at the end of the session as well.
Brilliant, fantastic, thanks. So we're going to look at our first topic, which continues the theme of motivation. So how can we really power up that motivation for development? How can we take that time out of our busy schedules? And what we know from motivation theory and studies is that it's actually the intrinsic motivation that we need to be focusing on, rather than what we would commonly call extrinsic, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But if we do have a motivation to for development, and we anchor our development about things that motivate us, it gives us more momentum to step out of the comfort zone and work hard at making changes and improvements. But it also gives us more confidence to step out of our comfort zone, because it's things that we're genuinely interested in. So when we think about this term intrinsic motivation, what it simply means is that we're motivated to do something because we love to do it, or it really feels important for us to do, rather than being motivated to seek a reward or avoid a punishment. That is the more, the more extrinsic. So when we think about back to the carrot and the stick, so to speak, that extrinsic, external motivational aspect. But actually, if we start to source our internal motivation, it's going to be much more powerful. And Dan Ping did some work around this, a Harvard professor, and he identified 3 aspects of intrinsic motivation. The first being autonomy, that we're able to choose how we complete our work. So again, if we choose the development that we are looking to take ownership for, we're going to be much more likely to do it. The second aspect is mastery, clear link to development here, the desire to get better at something that really matters to you. So again, recognizing that investment of time, it's going to be much more likely you're going to do it if it really does matter and have meaning for you. And then the third aspect is purpose. And this is, again, linked to that mastery. We're working to fulfill our why, the meaning in our work, the reason we do what we do. So again, if we're linking our development to our purpose, our meaning in work, we're much more likely to focus on it and do it. And so checking your development objectives against these 3 aspects can really help you to decide if they motivate you intrinsically or not. Do they create that sense of autonomy? Am I able to take ownership for this development activity? Is it really giving me the opportunity to get something better, getting better at something that matters to me? And is it really helping me achieve my purpose at work, that contribution that I want to make? So we've got another poll, haven't we, Mark? Are you happy to introduce it?
Yep. So poll number 2. So which areas, tick all that apply, need to be addressed to increase your motivation? Let's see what everyone's got there. And while the voting's coming through, just to have a look in the chat panel, and there's a couple of things around the things that are getting in the way of motivation, things like blockages, knowing where to start or where to go, so that could impact motivation. Time constraints, so trying to work out whether this thing is going to be helpful in the future, and kind of time constrained. So some great ones. Thanks for adding those to the chat.
I think that knowing where to go is a really important one, isn't it? Because, as I say, some careers are quite the pathway is quite clear, but others less so. And I think the more we look at career management now, it's less of the upward ladder, it's much more of a winding path. Yeah. So again, we for those of you that are researchers, we've identified the framework, which I think is a really useful starting point. But I think for those of you that perhaps haven't got that framework or that clearer path, maybe thinking about the bit about, as we've said, the bit about the work that you absolutely love to do. What's the thing that really motivates you to do? Gives you an idea of the sense of the direction maybe that your next step might want to take you in. And it's about building your network and chatting and exploring, all of course, which takes time, I guess, to fit into a busy day. But part of that research around where do I need to get to, and Mark will talk a little bit about that later.
So keep voting. So we've got, I'm receiving a message saying poll error. All right, okay. So if you wanted to put in the chat, if you're having a problem with the poll, then if you can also put in the chat which are the areas. I won't let you submit. I'll relaunch the poll. Sorry about this.
Okay.
Right, there we are. We'll have a go at this one. So if you could submit your answers, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Right, they're coming through really quickly now, which is good.
Oh.
Great stuff. And it's a similar answers as well, which is great. All right, so we've got 56 in, 56%. That seems to have worked. Okay, just give you a few more seconds. So which areas do you think need to be addressed to increase your motivation? Come on, I think we can get above 70%.
Well, we are asking people to do it twice. We might be pushing our luck here, Mark.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we'll close the poll there. So just share the results on this. So we've got 19% autonomy, 59% mastery, but out in front, the purpose. So yeah, it's quite a strong one of areas to address kind of the purpose of it. And there was a chat message about things being relevant and supporting my why. So, you know, alignment there with the purpose of these in order to drive motivation.
Absolutely. And I guess, again, some of us might need to revisit that purpose and check in with it. Is that still our purpose? Is that still what we want to achieve? Because, you know, some of our career aspirations may have been formed, you know, earlier on when we were younger, less experienced. Maybe now we need to reshape them and check that those aspects, as we say, fulfill what it is that you're looking for. And I guess the interesting thing is reflecting back on previous development activities. What are the things that you've enjoyed and you've got a lot from, and what are the things that you haven't enjoyed so much or you felt weren't as meaningful for you? And that gives you that sense of did it meet my intrinsic motivation or not? So reflection is a really useful source. Brilliant, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our next topic now in terms of how do we really power up our development activity. And this is around the work of Edgar Schein and career anchors. So Edgar Schein developed this work, you know, quite a while ago now, but he suggests that each and every individual possesses specific and unique anchors that form the basis of individual role and development choice. And so for those of us that are thinking about our development, if we understand what those anchors are, it's useful to see, again, does the development activity meet those career anchors, or is there anything I can do to help me meet them? And it's important to recognise that these career anchors do change through our career. It depends very much on the stage of our career and our life to some extent, and they also change in relation to external events. So they're not fixed, and there's no good, bad, desirable or undesirable anchor. They just are what they are at a particular time. And so it's useful to again check in on them every couple of years to make sure that the development activity is meeting our deeper need. So I'll take you through them briefly, and whilst I'm describing them, it'd be great for you to just take a moment to note any that particularly resonate for you right now. But again, perhaps pop them in the chat. It'd be great to hear from you. So the first one is technical and functional competence. So these are individuals who enjoy being really good at specific tasks and will work hard to develop the specific skills necessary to be able to complete them. So this is around expertise, really building expertise. Then we have a general management competence. So this is individuals who enjoy positions of responsibility, they thrive with them, they like to tackle problems, build relationships, interact and work with and through others, and of course often need a strong sense of emotional intelligence here. Important point here, if your aspiration is in managerial and the general manager anchor isn't one for you, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be a great manager. It just means it's going to be a different element of the anchor that you'll fulfill. So whilst it's a general management competence, it's not necessarily without it, you're not going to be able to achieve that. So I wanted to just make that clear. The third one is autonomy and independence. These are people that like to be left to their own devices and be able to act independently without needing too much direction, interference or confirmation. That will come later in the order. The next one being security and stability. And here we're seeking stable and predictable positions and activities. And these are people that like to plan aspects of life around work. Yeah, so they're probably going to be people that take less risk, take less risky choices in their career, maybe people that stay at the same organisation or same position. And this is one that I think is having an impact from external events. When we're working with clients at the moment, what I'm seeing with a particular group of clients is they this is becoming increasingly important, and people are sometimes being a little bit surprised by that. And I think part of it could be, I've got no evidence on this, but part of it could be the situation we're in with the pandemic, and the other part of it could be the fact that that organisation has had a lot of restructure and change as a result of some of the challenges they've experienced. So this is just a demonstration of how the external impact changes the anchors that we might be placing importance on. Okay, so let's see what's next then. We've got entrepreneurial creativity and capability. So these are people that love to be creative, enjoy brainstorming, inventing, often seek to run their own business, maybe a sideline to some extent as well, if they've got time to fit that in. And they're different to, I touched on autonomy before, we'll come to the autonomy image, but they're different to people who seek autonomy, because these are people that want to share the workload. They enjoy working with other individuals and having other individuals helping them deliver their creativity. The next one we're looking at is autonomy and independence. So I'm going to recap on this just in case. These are people that like to take control of their own work. They like to act independently without needing too much direction, interference, or confirmation. And so again, recognizing that element of autonomy that we all like from our intrinsic motivation, but this will be a stronger driver for certain people. The next one is pure challenge. And so this is where we are driven by the need to be stimulated by new challenges, and we want to be tested on solving problems. So these are people that will often move jobs when their current position becomes comfortable, when there's less opportunity to develop. It no longer possesses the challenges that they need to progress. And then we'll move to one that perhaps is, without making too many assumptions, is one that might be quite familiar. This is an anchor around service and dedication to a cause. People like to seek new ways to help other people, both within organisations and outside of organisations. And so often are found in relevant employment areas like health and social care, for example, HR maybe, customer service, something that's got that service element and need to support and help. And then the final element is lifestyle. And lifestyle is where individuals orientate their choices around their pattern of living as a whole. And rather than it being a balance of work and life, it becomes integrated. So, they'll do a kind of work that allows them to do what they like to do in their life as well. So they often make work out of their hobby and their interest and their passion, or they'll have a working pattern that allows them to integrate, as opposed to having that balance. They're not so much keeping work and life separate, but bringing it together. So these are the anchors. Any that have reflected for you, again, it'd be great to look in the chat, Mark, and see if anyone's made any comments.
There, everyone's been very quiet at the moment.
Oh, listening hard.
I think one that kind of resonates with me, you mentioned general management before, and actually those are kind of things through my career have kind of formed that thread. So getting involved in more strategic roles has been a passion of mine, and building relationships has been an underpinning foundation of everything I've done in my career, and everything that I do that kind of forms a foundation to it. So general management actually really resonates with me, and it's something that, to be honest, hasn't changed a whole lot over my career. It's still those kind of things which act as my anchor, and why I go for certain roles is that those are the fundamentals that I look for.
Yeah, so starting as a chemist and moving it into a business and organizational consultant, we can see that pathway. Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
So for those of you that want to learn a little bit more about this, soon we'll be launching an online resource around this topic with lots more information and tools. And one of the tools in that module will be a questionnaire that helps you uncover which of these anchors are really important to you. But as I say, you might be resonating with some of this right now anyway. So keep any comments coming around that, because again, it'd be interesting to hear from you. The next thing I want to share with you in terms of getting the most out of your development is really thinking about the mindset that we're approaching development with. And if we approach our development with a growth mindset, which sounds obvious that we should be doing that, but sometimes it takes us some time to reframe our thinking about it, then we're going to get much more investment in our activity. It sometimes might be our own thinking patterns and our levels of confidence that are stopping us from stepping out of our comfort zone and thinking in that growth mindset. And so recognizing that and understanding what we can do to help that is very powerful. And this work came from Carol Dweck, a Stanford University professor, and she kind of coined this term growth and fixed mindset based on some work that she did with her students. She looked at students that had lower IQ scores but came out with better results than their peers who had higher IQ scores. And the research showed that it was the mindset that the students approached the work with, their effort that they put in, and their response to failure. And this is quite critical, the recognizing that failure is a real necessary part of learning. And of course, if we are wanting to avoid failure and not comfortable with failure, then that kind of prevents us from learning really effectively, because we learn so much from our mistakes and our failures. So here on the image, we can see some of the terms that you would tend to be thinking or hearing when somebody is in a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So how can we recognize that we're in a fixed mindset and think, let's shift that? And how can we help others, of course, too? So reflecting on a development project or task that's really stretched you in the past, what did you think about it initially? And how did you reframe it? And what was the result? Again, maybe popping any thoughts around that in the chat, that often we kind of embark on development and often are thinking in that fixed mindset first. And how did we reframe it? A real, very topical example that I can share with you is my development around delivering online webinars. 2 years ago, I was kind of actively avoiding this kind of work. I didn't feel very confident with technology, and certainly hadn't had much practice of it, and felt it might not be the best way to connect. But of course, being forced to work in this way through the pandemic, I've got much more comfortable, much more confident. And I can remember the pointed thinking back in March 2020, where I kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to use this opportunity, as awful as it was, none of us wanted it, but I'm going to use this opportunity to try it out and learn and see how I go. And that's really helped me move into that much more growth mindset and thinking around that development. So recognizing, where are your thinking patterns taking you? Is there something that might be holding you back in terms of your confidence? And how can you reframe that into something that's going to be helpful for you, so you approach that development with the right mindset and the right levels of confidence and thinking about it? Anything coming through in the chat with regard to growth mindset? Any reflections that people are sharing, Mark?
Not quite yet.
Okay. Well, do share any of your experiences with us. So the next aspect that we're going to talk about in terms of powering up development is strengths-based development. And I touched on this in the introduction. Often we think about development from a negative perspective, a deficit perspective. What are we not doing? What are we not good at? What do we need to improve? But there's been so much research in this area around shifting our thinking to what are we doing well and what could we do even more of or even better. And the study that I wanted to draw out, it's taken from early 2002, should I say. It was Corporate Leadership Council that did it at the time. They're now renamed as Gartner. They surveyed 19 managers and employees, and their results showed that when companies focused on employee strengths during performance development reviews, the employees' performance rose by up to 36%. When there was a focus on weakness in performance development reviews, the performance decreased by almost 27%. So quite stark results there. And as I said, because we've got this natural bias towards negativity, we have it in our brains anyway to keep us safe as human beings, but also our education systems, the school systems often focus on the grades. What are we not doing so well? Where do we need to put more effort into? So it not only do we have it naturally, but it kind of tends to build through our experience. We have to kind of reactively think about it differently. There's some more later research by Gallup. They showed that strengths-based feedback, so what are you doing well and what could you do even more of, improved productivity by 36% and reduced absence by 11%. And the Strengths Partnership did some work around performance again, and that showed a massive 70% improvement in individual performance. It's also been linked to improved goal achievement, improved loyalty and engagement. And importantly for development, people who receive recognition and encouragement of their strengths learn quicker and show higher levels of discretionary effort. And there's two reasons for this. Not only is that development likely to feel like we're more competent at it, it's going to come easier to us, but it has an energizing quality too. So it's linking back into motivation, the topic we started with today. It gives us that sense of energy. It's often the intrinsic motivation satisfier because it's things we love to do, because we feel comfortable, we feel empowered and engaged. And so, as I say, recognizing these aspects of helping us plan our development so it's going to be even more powerful for us is really important. So a quick quiz question. We've got another poll for Mark to introduce right now.
Yep, and this one is, so looking at your strengths, so how much time should we be spent, so how much time do you think we should be spending on optimizing strengths versus developing weaknesses? So in your view, what's the kind of split? Is it 25-75 strengths to weaknesses? Is it 50-50? Is it 70-30 in favor of strength, or is it 80-20 in favor of strengths? Okay, we've got the polls coming through, so 55-58%.
Now, some of you who've attended a webinar with us before might know the answer to this, because we talk about strengths quite a lot in lots of different aspects of our work, because it is such a powerful, motivator.
Yeah. So just give me a few more seconds. We're at 76%. Can we get 80%? Yeah. Oh, 81. Fantastic. 3, 2, 1. End the poll there and share the results. And we've got so 25-75 is 6% of the audience. 50-50 is 20%. 70-30 in preference to strengths is 46%, and an 80-20 split, strengths to weaknesses, is 29%. So most people think you should be 70-30 split.
Okay, well, for those of you that answered 80-20, well done, gold star. 80-20 is what the theory tells us, and I guess recognizing that we are working against many years of evolution with our brains here, we have to put specific energy into those strengths. That's not to say weaknesses aren't important, but we look at those through a slightly different lens. We say, of our development gaps, which of these are critical to me achieving this next role that I like to achieve? If it's going to make a material impact, then yes, focus on it. So really keeping that focus much more on strengths to overcome those deeply ingrained negativity biases that we have in our brain. Brilliant. So in summary, if we're going to supercharge our investment, we need to think about what really intrinsically motivates us. What do we love to do? We need to look at our anchors that need to be satisfied. We want to get ourselves in the right mindset, the growth mindset, and we want to focus on strengths in terms of our development activity. And I'm going to hand you over to Mark now, who's going to introduce a couple of tools to help you plan your development pathway.
Great stuff. Thanks, Jo. So we can view development in 3 phases effectively. So it's kind of a journey of 3 phases. So in the last few minutes of today's session, just identifying some tips and tools and techniques that might help you develop up your development plan. And just remember, think about your anchors as well, so that the things that Jo's introduced as well. So the 3 phases are effectively, where are you now? So deepening your own self-awareness. For example, getting feedback from others. Where are your strengths? Where are your areas for development, and actually engaging with them and deepening your self-awareness. So where are you now? Where do you want to get to? So developing up some development goals. What do you want to achieve? And then creating a plan. How are you going to get there? So what of your what on the job actions initiatives you're going to take? What off the job training do you need to have? So get some ideas of some milestones and some key initiatives that you need to identify in order to achieve your development goals. So let's have a look at phase 1. So where am I? Some of you may recognize Johari's window. So there are things that everybody knows. So that's where the open box there at the top left. But there are things we don't know. And so the where am I stage is actually, how can we maximize the things in the open box that are known to you, because then you can do something about it. And I'm reminded of the quote by Donald Rumsfeld, if anyone remembers it, from 2002. And he was responding to a question about the lack of evidence linking the Iraqi government to weapons of mass destruction. So, yeah. But it's kind of an example of, he kind of responded to the question by saying, as we know, there are no knowns. There are things we know. We also know there are unknowns. That's to say, there are things that we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns, and these are the things we don't know. So within the sphere of everything that we do, things fit into each box. And the aim of the where am I phase is really to maximize that open quadrant. So being aware that there are things you won't know, there are things that you don't know. And through some tools and techniques is that you can actually you can bring those into the fore. So maybe they become a known unknown, but actually maybe they become into the open area where actually you know about these things, and then that helps you plan accordingly. So the first thing we can do is practicing techniques about mindfulness and meditation. They can really help kind of shut out the outside world and help you just think about where you are currently. So technique there of mindfulness and meditation, if you've not tried it. Other things you can do, there's a technique called journaling, and you can find that even just 10 minutes of journaling a day, and keeping a journal, it's keeping a log of your thoughts, a log of your feelings. It's something which is private to you. You're not going to be sharing this, but enables you to put down on paper kind of how you're feeling. And keeping a journal helps you as you're looking at the areas for development and things you want to actually work on. Your journal acts as that log of, actually, this is how I felt at that moment. This is how I felt at this moment. And you can use words or pictures in a journal. But that has actually been proved to reduce anxiety, boosting self-confidence, and really acts as that record of challenges of what you faced and how you overcame them. Because quite often we may forget those things when we're thinking about which areas do we need to develop. A journal can help kind of remind you of those challenges that you've had and where you've had success and where you've struggled. And as I say, just 10 minutes of journaling a day has good benefits on well-being. You can take a look at yourself. So in conjunction with things like journaling, look in the mirror and objectively write down your current understanding of, what you think you're good at and where your gaps may be. Journaling is writing down your plans, but actually writing down your plan, because once you've got it in front of you, it increases your motivation to actually achieve it. So linking back to the motivation from before. If you've written down your plans, your aspirations, what you want to achieve, it makes it much easier to translate those into your development plan. With that self-reflection, looking in the mirror, you only gain certain insights into yourself. So ask friends, ask your trusted friends to describe you, and ask them to be as candid as they can, because this is coming from a point of being constructive and helping you. They're much more likely to give you honest feedback about your strengths and your areas of and your gap areas and development areas. So ask friends. We can use things like psychometric testing. So taking personality tests to help identify areas for development. So there are these things that we can access. Remember, these are all the things that we can use to increase the known knowns in the open quadrant, the things we know about, and therefore we can plan for. We can get feedback from colleagues. So with us friends, we can also get feedback from colleagues. Things like 360-degree feedback with people who report to you, the people you report to, the people you work with, and that gives a balanced view, an objective balanced view of the things where people see actually you've got real strength here, or that's an area that could be done, that could be developed. And that could be through some formal surveying and questionnaires, or it could be informally just chatting to people. And the final thing is to maybe what you can do is set aside, say, 15 minutes a day, and to reflect on what's gone well, what could have gone better. I mean, a technique that I use is at the end of each day is to write down on a post-it just 10 things, 10 highlights of the day, and that could be things that went well or things that didn't go well. And that just reminds me, actually on reflection, you think, actually, it wasn't as bad a day as I thought it was, or that meeting didn't quite go as bad as I thought it would. And just doing a daily reflection really helps, raise the awareness of areas of strength and where your development areas may be. So Joe, from those, is there anything that you've used that you find useful?
I think one thing that I would really recommend is that feedback from colleagues. Obviously, there's a 360 you can do. That's quite a big undertaking. You need to make sure your organisation can host it and all of that. But one thing that I kind of use a lot with clients that I coach is three questions. What went well? So I'd use it as a way of capturing feedback in the moment. Perhaps ask a trusted colleague or a line manager, what went well? What could I have done differently, or what could I have done better? So 3 nice reflective questions, and I'd attach them to specific events, because I think sometimes when you ask them as open questions, it doesn't give as much rich feedback. So say, for example, I was hosting a meeting or delivering a presentation, I'd ask after that event, from the presentation, what do you think went well? What could I have done differently or better to make it even better? And so asking it in a safe way, but also in a way that makes it relevant, can be really helpful. And I think that building feedback and asking for feedback is really powerful from a developmental perspective.
Great stuff. Thanks, Joe. So the next phase is where do I want to be? And there is an exercise that you could do. It's called it has many monikers, but the version we've got here is the Wheel of Life. And effectively what you do is, against those dimensions on the Wheel of Life, is just rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how satisfied you are with those. So based on your current where you are, holistically it looks at your whole life, work and home, and on a scale of 1 to 10 how satisfied you are with that particular dimension. And then in terms of where you want to be, is against those different dimensions, is you know, if you're currently rating a 5 on health and fitness, is ideally in the next 12 months, do you want to be a 7? Now, from doing this as a holistic exercise, it identifies the areas, helps you prioritize, rather than it being, you know, I think you can get overwhelmed with, you know, different areas you want to start developing. And actually something like the Wheel of Life exercise just helps you prioritize those areas where there's going to be a bigger return on investment of your time and effort over the next 12 months. Now, once you've done that in the next 12 months, is next time you do this next year, some other areas would identify, and that becomes your next development plan. But actually, it's a really good exercise for kind of putting on paper, everything's written down, of where you think you are and where you want to get to from a holistic approach. Now, there'll be a link to the exercise in the upcoming module, as Joe's already mentioned. So yeah, watch this space on that being going live.
Yeah, and there's a few more as well. So we've selected 3 today, haven't we, to share, but there are quite a few more tools.
Yeah. Okay. And finally, the how am I going to get there? So you might be familiar with the 70-20-10 model. And so this is thinking broadly of all the opportunities to learn something new or to address the development areas, leveraging your strengths. So 70% should be on the job learning, finding opportunities to challenge and stretch yourself within your role. So it might be, you know, volunteering for that project, that challenging project, or shadowing somebody on something which enables you to learn some new skills. Making sure your own personal objectives are stretching enough and addressing your development areas. So 70% should be on the job. 20% learning from others, so from line managers, from peers, from colleagues, from subject matter experts. So examples in here might be requesting feedback through whichever mechanism it is. It could be being a coach or being coached. It could be being a mentor or being a mentee. So all of those are opportunities to learn from others. So 20%. And then 10% being the more formal off the job. So, you know, examples of those: continuing professional development, getting certifications, accreditations, the more formal classroom or virtual learning opportunities. But if you can see from the 70-20-10 approach, that's a small part. Most of the learning is actually through on the job. Joe, have you got any examples of what you've done in the 70-20-10 zones?
Yeah, so I think one that comes to mind is as I developed as a coach, so that was something I started to do in around 2012-15. So I took some formal qualifications, some formal programs, my 10%, my ILM 7 in executive coaching. Then from a 20% of my learning, taking that formal 10% on, I might do additional learning that extends my practice, different coaching methods and approaches to widen the toolkit. Then the 20% of my learning around coaching is through my formal supervision. So I have one-to-one supervision and group supervision to help me learn through challenges and issues that may come up in coaching. And then 70%, I would say I learn something from every coaching session, because every session is different. And as you do, I do reflective practice after each session. What I ask them, what could they, what did they appreciate? What could have made it even better for them? And I reflect on myself. What went well? What could I have done differently or better? What should I do next time? So there's that mixture of a bit of feedback and reflective practice on the 70% for me.
Great stuff. Thanks, Joe. So once we've identified the areas we want to spend some time and effort developing, then we need to convert them into a plan, or else nothing will kind of happen there. So I just wanted to share with you a 4-stage process here of actually creating your objectives, involving team members from the start. So if we think about the team level motivation and developing teams' skills and experiences as well, it's about involving everybody. Linking the objectives to a strategy or a project objectives or an organizational objectives, because that makes sure you're really cementing that purpose of why we're actually developing those things, because they're connected with the organizational aims or project aims. adapt the objectives in real time, so things will happen. So we'll have a vision of where we want to get to, but actually the steps getting there may change as we go along. So be agile and adapt those as required. And ultimately make sure they're smart, make sure you can measure those. So in 12 months time, we can look back and say, did we achieve those things? And if we did, fantastic. Then what's the next step? If we didn't do that, then understanding and root cause, but why didn't we do that? So we do it a bit differently next time. So really important to have smart objectives, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time bound. So just in summary of today's session, we have hopefully showed the importance of optimizing development. Looking at it's not about developing weaknesses. It's not about a focus on weaknesses, but actually a focus on strengths, because a focus on strengths can help pull up the areas for development. Really important that. So being really aware of what we're really good at, because that can really help us address our development areas and gaps. And then finally, hopefully there's been, some hints and tips or tools and techniques you can think, actually, I've not tried that before. So give you some ideas of some things you can do to help identify, plan your development goals. And just before I hand back over to Martine, in the pack, when you get the slides afterwards, there's some resources here. The one at the bottom is the coming soon. There's a link to the landing page for the Leadership Lab. So there are already modules in there, but just watch this space for the upcoming Optimising Development module. That will be imminent in the next few weeks. Okay, so with that, I shall hand over to Martine.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark and Joe. Always a fascinating subject matter. So we're a little bit quiet on some of our questions that have come through so far, but I do have a really interesting one that I often, think about this myself over my years of development. So how can I get my manager to help me find development opportunities when they just want me to get on with the job in hand?
This is a this is a real common, and with some managers who I've said before about sometimes I've usually had really good line managers and they're kind of watching out for me and they understand the value of development. I have had some line managers and it's a case of you just got to get on with it. We've got deadlines, we've got all this pressure of doing the work and not really then valuing the development conversation. What I found really helps here is that connection with the development initiative or the area to develop with the result that the manager is aiming to get through the team. So the delivery of the result there. So really connecting the value of the development with we'll be able to do this better. So we'll be able to deliver better. Therefore, there's a value add for you for actually doing this. And just making that really clear of what the value add is of actually doing this. It's not just about personal, but it's about the organization or the team or the project or the manager actually benefit from that as well.
I think to build on that, I would add where you are recognizing there's some challenge here is when you're agreeing your performance development objectives, you build in some stretch into those that are going to suit you and help you with your aspirations. So looking at those stretching projects or getting exposure to particular areas of knowledge and information that you can do through your performance objective, but it's going to be helping you on with your on-your-job development, your 70% on your job development.
Great stuff. Thanks, Joe.
Be great to
hear. Any other, Martin?
No, that's, oh, hang on. Oh, a nice meaty one. Looks like it's just this minute comes through.
Yeah. Oh my word.
Yeah. So I have been pulled off of training courses already started. I've been prevented from applying for higher paid positions. I was not given the opportunity to apply for a role I was currently doing on higher banding. My maternity leave cover have developed after less than 12 months in my role. You would think that I'm a bad employee and I'm not. I've just been quiet about my feelings, although these experiences have made me more, sorry, let me read that again. Although these experiences have made me more motivated, my confidence has taken or took to an all-time low to apply for these internal and external positions because of her experience, as I don't feel good enough. What advice do you have for someone that feels quite lost?
That my heart goes out to you for that question. That must have been a very difficult situation, and as you say, just at the time when you need to be looking for those opportunities, you've got to be feeling good about yourself, because if you're not going to show the best side of yourself. So I would recommend here focusing on strengths first of all. 2 reasons. First of all, it gets you in that right mindset because you're thinking about what you're doing well. You're thinking about what you can do even better. And I think if you start to talk to people about your strengths, you'll get that feedback that boosts that confidence for you. If you look for opportunities that allow you to use your strengths, you're going to feel better as a result of that, because again, it's that intrinsic motivation. And often reflecting on what you have done, even though you haven't had some of those formal opportunities, looking at all of those development that you've done in the last year or so, however many years it's been, really thinking about what have I learned, what's been different for me. Often we don't, until we take some time out to think about what we've done, we don't realize just how much we have developed to be able to share and talk about it. So again, I think it's about reflecting, speaking to people, gathering that data together, but really recognizing what you have done without that public recognition maybe, and bringing that into the conversation and making it much more visible, and your aspirations much more visible, so there's no misunderstanding.
Okay, great. I do have another one here for you. So as a manager, this is quite interesting, turning it on its head. So as a manager, how do you motivate someone who doesn't seem interested or engaged in their own development?
Well, there's a brilliant module on NIHR Learn, Empowerment and Motivation. I think it's number 4 on the list, so have a look at that module. There'll be loads of supporting activity in there, but it's really tapping into what is the thing that gets them out of bed in the morning, which sometimes is really difficult to do, but really forcing the question with some open questions. What do you really love about your job? What would you like to do even more of in your work? Because if you can tap into that bit, it's going to give them a bit of energy and motivation for it. I don't know whether you've got anything to add there, Mark.
No, I concur with that, Jo. Yeah, it's that that there is. I mean, the thing about just checking their interest and the fact that they're not engaged and having that conversation. But yeah, I concur with what you said, Jo. Yeah. And check out the module.
Yes, definitely.
I do have one more here as well. I get asked, what are you interested in? I feel that this has held me back because I haven't showed a clear interest in anything specific, when actually I am interested in everything. Is that a bad thing, to not have a specific interest? Personally,
I think no, because often we talk about career development and career planning, but when I reflect on my own experience and others' experience, sometimes you say yes to the most unexpected opportunities that take you in a slightly different direction, and you learn so much from them. So I think by keeping open-minded and curious about everything gives you that opportunity to really keep your options open. I guess there'll be an element of where you're interested in everything, but there will be an element of what are the things that really are meaningful for you, and maybe that's the reflection you might want to do. You're interested in everything because you're a naturally curious person that loves learning, but actually what are the things that really feed into your why, into your meaning about your work, because they're going to be really powerful for you. Anything you would want to add there, Mark?
I just reflect on the anchors. So the anchors exercise is really useful here, because this question resonates with me, because people go, oh, what you're interested in, but actually, I won't close anything down, because even on paper it may not look like the thing that interests me, but once you actually do it, you think, oh, this is the best role I've had. So you I find it difficult to go, actually, what are you passionate about? But with the anchors, then I'm really clear about what drives me, what motivates me in creating purpose, and then using that to identify the opportunities. So maybe it's less about maybe the topic that you're interested in, but more about kind of elements of a role rather than it being the role itself. And that may be one way of looking at it.
Yeah. Great, good questions.
Just getting my mic off there. That's it. There are all the questions.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your energy and interest.
Okay, so shall I then close down our session? All right, so thank you once again, Mark and Joe. Hopefully everyone has found this webinar beneficial, feels able to implement some of the behaviours we've explored. And as I mentioned at the start of the webinar, for those of you joining us live, as we close the session, you will be asked to complete a quick evaluation form, and the link is available in the chat, which you may have noticed already. So this will give you an opportunity to share your email address. So as we've mentioned previously, we can then send you a copy of the slides. And of course, your feedback is always much appreciated. So all our webinars can be found on NIHR TV YouTube channel under the Development and Support Webinars playlist. There you will also find links as well in our chat box around, as we've been discussing, lots of resources around our NIHR Learn that Joe and Mark have mentioned. So currently there are 10 modules. There will soon be an 11th, so please watch out for that one. And these, of course, are of no cost to you. And you will have also seen in the chat the NIHR events page, so you can be kept up to date with all the things that are coming up. So once again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you again for your time and another fabulous session. Thank you, Joe and Mark.
Our pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.